Think about a global game of toy trading. Each country has its own unique toy. Americans have a toy car, Brits have a toy castle, Swedes have a toy moose, and Samoans have a toy palm tree. You can trade your toy for another, but it's not always easy to find someone who has the exact toy you want and also wants your toy. In our game, there's a really popular toy that almost everyone wants. Let's call it the hot toy, which is like the US dollar in our example. This toy is so popular that you can easily trade your own toy for it. So if you have a Samoan palm tree and want a Swedish moose, it might be hard to find a Swede who wants your palm tree. But you can easily trade your palm tree for the hot toy, and then trade that hot toy for the Swedish moose. This is essentially how currencies work in global trade. Because the US dollar, hot toy is widely accepted. It's often used as a bridge to facilitate transactions between two other currencies. And this is why we say that 88% of currency transactions occur with the US dollar. It's not that 88% of the time we're trading for the hot toy, but rather that it's just easier to swap our toys via the hot toy. The hot toy doesn't get to play only because it's popular, but also because it's trusted, stable, and there's a lot of it around. It has become the shortcut in our game, making trades happen more quickly and easily. That's why we say the US dollar is the plumbing of the global economy. It connects different houses that may not be directly linked and keeps the water flowing smoothly. Just as in our toy trading game, there are many unique types of currencies out there, and trading them all directly can be challenging. That's where the hot toy comes in, making the trades easier, quicker, and more efficient. To challenge this dominance of the hot toy, a new group emerges, BRICS. This group, known as BRICS, made up of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, is like a new ambitious team in the global economic game. Together, they control a large chunk of the world's surface area, hold a major portion of the world's population, and produce a significant portion of the world's goods and services. When you add everything they make, they've got more on their table than even the USA or the European Union. In a move to bolster their position in this game, the BRICS team is planning to trade more amongst themselves. They're even toying with the idea of creating their own unique currency, a sort of BRICS-buck. This could make their trading easier and reduce their reliance on the Western teams like the USA or the European Union. But this game change could be worrying for the other players. The BRICS team isn't exactly buddy-buddy with everyone else. Some of its members, like Russia and China, have been known to rub the others the wrong way. In this economic game, when a player steps out of line, the others can penalize them by stopping or reducing trade. But if these BRICS countries have their own little trading circle, these penalties might lose their bite. So if BRICS becomes a dominant team, it could mean that teams like the USA could lose out on a lot of the global trade action that's helped them grow strong over the past years. It could also mean that the BRICS team might feel they can play the game their own way without worrying about economic penalties from others. Yet, we must remember that even though these countries are on the same team, they don't always see eye to eye. They're diverse players with their own strategies and priorities. So whether they can actually pull this off and truly become a formidable team together is something we'll have to wait and see. This entire scenario presents three important questions to ponder. What is the financial endgame for the BRICS alliance? Could the BRICS pact spell trouble for nations outside of this coalition? What are the odds of this BRICS strategy succeeding in the long run? Following the devastation of World War II, the US emerged as a global leader, creating structures like NATO and the World Trade Organization. These bodies established global rules guided by Western philosophies for trade, economics, and justice. They were designed to maintain stability and encourage cooperation among nations. At the same time, another superpower, the Soviet Union, proposed an alternative set of rules and alliances. However, with the collapse of the Soviet Union in the 90s, the US and its wealthy allies were left as the sole decision-makers. This led to the spread and reinforcement of liberal values, democracy, and free trade worldwide. But as the global leader, the US has had the power to choose when to abide by its own rules and when to overlook them. In many instances, it acted as a global policeman, sometimes even going against its own principles by supporting dictators, interfering in democracies, and participating in regional conflicts. Yet, despite these contradictions, the period under this American-led system has been among the most peaceful in human history. Major world powers are less likely to go to war, understanding that aligning with the system brings economic growth and opportunity. They have realized that conflicts often lead to mutual destruction. The existence of nuclear weapons, which great powers have been wary to use against each other, also contributed to maintaining peace. So even with its flaws, the US-led world order has contributed significantly to global stability, reduced conflicts, and promoted economic growth. The US, after World War II, emerged as the global leader setting rules that facilitated trade, increased stability, and significantly reduced global poverty. However, this era seems to be approaching its end. Why? Thanks to the very rules the US set, China, which has the world's largest population, has grown into a significant player with the second largest economy and the largest military based on active forces. China sees the US as an overbearing overseer that adheres to the rules only when it benefits them. From China's perspective, the projection of Western values across the globe resembles a form of modern colonialism. China perceives the US as a power that has grown complacent and defensive due to its declining influence, broken politics, and societal divisions. As a result, China is constructing a rival system. In 2023, China's leader, Xi Jinping, announced his Global Civilization Initiative, advocating that countries must not impose their values or ideologies on others. Contrary to the US's strategy of promoting human rights and democracy worldwide, China proposes a transactional approach. Their system would be built on shared interests, mutually beneficial agreements, and opportune alliances, not high-minded values. And now, unlike before, China has the military might and financial resources to enforce this approach. This new dynamic is leading to a gradual decoupling of the US and China, who have been economically intertwined for decades. China is creating alliances globally, investing in infrastructure projects worldwide, creating dependency through debt, which it can use for leverage in the future. A notable example of this shift is China's move in March 2023 to broker peace between Saudi Arabia and Iran, two rivals the US couldn't reconcile. This demonstrates China's growing influence and the US's relative decline. However, the chessboard of global order has seen the US as the dominant player for a long time, but the dynamics are changing as China challenges this status quo. Like a powerful chess master studying the board, China is aligning with BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, and South Africa. These are all growing economies, and they're forming an alternative economic bloc, posing a counterforce to the US and its allies. Since 2009, the BRICS countries have been collaborating closely, even considering their own shared currency. This move could shake the reign of the US dollar, the usual king of international trade. Remember how we earlier talked about the US dollar being the hot toy everyone wants? This BRICS move is like introducing a new desirable toy to the playground, which could cause a significant shift in the way everyone trades. Interestingly, the world doesn't seem to be taking immediate sides. Many countries are acting as free agents, walking a fine line between aligning with the US or China, often doing what's best for their national interests. They are exploiting the rivalry between the two superpowers to negotiate the best trade and security deals, much like a shrewd business person would leverage competition between suppliers. For example, Brazil and India are deepening ties with both the US and China, striking a balance between their interests. Saudi Arabia, traditionally a US ally, is also nurturing relations with China. Turkey, despite being a NATO member, is maintaining economic ties with Russia and courting Chinese investment. Africa, a continent full of non-aligned countries, is also seeing a lot of Chinese investment. However, the US is not a passive observer. It is making efforts to retain and regain influence, countering China's moves, and investing in military infrastructure in Asia. We're witnessing the early stages of a new multipolar world, a challenging game of chess between a long-standing superpower and a rising challenger. Let's take a step back and look at the broader picture. For years, countries have talked about wanting to lessen their dependence on the US dollar. These conversations have been happening since the 1960s, but so far the chatter hasn't led to significant changes. Today, the US dollar is still the main player in global trade, making up a large 84.3% of cross-border exchanges. The Chinese yuan, which some see as a potential rival, only accounts for 4.5%. So, what could cause the US dollar to lose its top spot? There are two main scenarios. First, the US economy could suffer a huge collapse. It would need to be a disaster so big that the dollar would no longer be seen as a safe place for money. This is how previous dominant currencies have fallen. Second, there's a newer possibility. This idea is that currencies are valuable because everyone uses them. This is known as a network effect. Right now, most countries believe that the US is using the dollar for good. But what if this changes? What if there's a widespread belief that the US is misusing this privilege, meddling too much in global affairs? There are some people who are worried about this today. They hear complaints getting louder, but it's important to remember that they're still coming from a minority of countries. Most countries agree with what the US is doing. There's a kind of agreement that keeps everything balanced. If the US steps out of line, other countries can threaten to move their reserves out of the dollar. This keeps everyone in check. However, the forces keeping the dollar at the top are very strong. For the dollar to fall, it would take more than some angry words in a newspaper. We're talking about a major shakeup of the global order and the end of the US as a superpower. So, as we look to the future, the world is stepping into the unknown. The decisions made in the coming years will be key in shaping our global economy. As we journey into this new era, the moves made by all players on this global chessboard will determine the path we collectively tread.